Ladies and gentlemen, consistency is not glamorous. It does not sparkle. It doesn't parade itself in front of flashing lights or demand your applause. It lives in silence. It thrives in repetition. It's there when no one is watching, and it's doing what needs to be done, long after the mood to do it has disappeared. Consistency is the bridge between desire and achievement. It's not the idea, not the dream, not the plan, it's the steady march, day in and day out, across a terrain most people abandon before they even get their boots dirty. People talk about goals, about greatness, about transformation, as if the universe is handing out miracles for the loudest wish. But the truth is, the universe responds to action. The world moves for those who move toward it every single day with discipline in one hand and sacrifice in the other. Consistency is not intensity, and that's the great misunderstanding. You don't need a burst of fire, you need a slow burn, a fire that doesn't consume itself but endures. That's the power that reshapes you. Every day you show up not for the world, but for yourself. You send a message deep into your soul. A message that says, I am someone who follows through. You plant that flag in the ground, and every day you stay true to that. You reinforce the foundation of who you are. That's where real confidence comes from. Not from hype, not from noise, but from the quiet certainty that comes from keeping promises to yourself when no one's looking. And here's the part no one wants to admit. You're going to want to quit. You're going to feel like you're wasting your time. You'll tell yourself this effort isn't working fast enough. You'll look at others and think, they're further than me, they're faster, they're luckier. And that's when consistency becomes your greatest ally, because when the mind wavers and the heart doubts, the habit holds. You don't rely on how you feel. You rely on what you've built. Consistency is not perfection. It's not about never missing, it's about never quitting. You fall, but you rise at the same time tomorrow. You stumble, but you recommit the very next day. You don't wait for motivation to strike again like lightning from the sky. You create your own momentum by moving, by deciding, by acting when you least feel like it. That's where transformation happens, not in the comfort of inspiration, but in the discomfort of persistence. Most people live like gamblers. They bet big once or twice and pray for a jackpot. But the ones who win, the ones who change the game, they're the ones who invest daily. They don't seek the rush of the one-time victory. They build interest, stack deposits, compound effort, day after day, hour after hour. While others sleep on their dreams, they work silently on their foundations. And when the moment comes, they're not lucky, they're ready. Do not envy the man who is loud in the beginning. Envy the one who's silent, but still here at the end. Because what you see on the outside, the physique, the business, the reputation, the skill, that's just the harvest. The real story is underground, the roots, the process, the hours when no one clapped, the nights when sleep was sacrificed for growth, the mornings when the bed begged for another hour and they still rose. That's consistency. It's not what you do once. It's who you are every time. Your habits are carving you. Like a sculptor with a chisel in hand, every repetition is removing what is unnecessary and revealing who you're meant to become. The more consistent you are, the clearer the image becomes. But if you stop, if you drop the chisel every time it gets hard, you remain unfinished. Potential without form, promise without delivery. You were not made to start things. You were made to finish. Let the others chase trends. Let them jump from goal to goal like moths to a light. You stay the course. You lay the brick. You build the wall. You walk the path that doesn't give you immediate reward but molds your spirit in the waiting. You earn your name through grit, not gift. And eventually, when the results come, and they will, you won't just be ready, you'll be worthy. Not because you were perfect, but because you were consistent. It begins in the smallest of actions, waking up at the same time every day, brushing your teeth even when you're tired, finishing the work you promised yourself you'd complete. These don't seem like extraordinary choices. They don't feel like they carry the weight of destiny, but they do, because every small act is a vote for the kind of person you believe yourself to be. And the more you cast that vote, the more your identity takes shape not through what you hope, or even what you say, but through what you do over and over again. The truth is that your life is a reflection of your patterns. Not your intentions, not your inspiration, patterns, routines, rituals. You can want to be a strong person, a wise person, a disciplined person, but unless your behavior lines up with those values repeatedly, your mind won't believe you. And your body won't follow. That's the terrifying and liberating truth. You're not defined by what you believe in your heart. You're defined by what you do when it's hard, when it's boring, when it feels like no one else is watching. Because in those moments, you're teaching yourself who you are. Every time you show up when it's difficult, you're proving to yourself that you are trustworthy, you're reliable, you're grounded, and that inner trust is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Without it, you'll always doubt yourself. You'll start something and question whether you have what it takes halfway through. You'll sabotage your progress because a part of you has never learned that you finish what you start. But when you live consistently, that doubt begins to fade. You earn confidence the hard way, not through affirmations, not through praise, but through follow-through. The reason most people never change is because they treat their identity like a feeling instead of a structure. They think if they just think differently, they'll become someone new. But thinking is temporary, doing is structural. What you do becomes the scaffolding of your personality. And when your actions align with your principles day after day, those principles become embodied. You don't just talk about integrity, you become a person of integrity. You don't just admire courage, you develop it in your bones. You become consistent in the values that matter to you because you've proven you can live them even under pressure. We tend to overestimate the importance of inspiration and underestimate the power of repetition. One moment of inspiration can light a fire, yes, but it's the repeated act of feeding the flame that keeps it alive. You don't get strong from one workout. You don't become wise from one book. You don't develop character from one hard conversation. It's the relentless return, the revisiting of the same practice, the same mindset, the same discipline that forges you into someone different. It's not glamorous, but it is transformational. Repetition refines you. There's a deeper psychological dimension to all of this. Human beings crave coherence. We want to see ourselves as consistent. If your actions keep aligning with a particular identity, your subconscious begins to rearrange itself around that image. If you keep rising early, showing up on time, training with effort, speaking with honesty over time, your inner voice starts to change. It doesn't say, I should do this. It says, this is who I am. And once your identity aligns with your behavior, consistency becomes easier. You're no longer forcing yourself to act against who you are, you're simply acting as yourself. The tragedy is that most people are inconsistent not because they're lazy, but because they don't see the cost. They treat small decisions like they're isolated. They say it's just one skipped workout, or just one lie, or just one day off. But there are no isolated decisions. Every choice compounds, and more importantly, every choice carries a message. Skip the gym, and the message is, my health doesn't matter today. Lie to someone, and the message is, my integrity is flexible. And the worst part, your mind listens. You can't lie to your mind, it sees everything. And if it hears enough inconsistent signals, it concludes that you're not who you say you are. That's when identity fractures. That's when shame grows. That's when self-trust erodes. Consistency is how you earn the right to believe in yourself again. Not in theory, but in action, because you can't fake a track record. You can't pretend you've shown up every day. You either have or you haven't. And if you have, you carry that power with you everywhere you go. You walk into rooms with calm, with clarity, with presence, not because you're better than anyone, but because you know what it took to stand there. You didn't skip steps. You didn't cheat the process. You lived your way into this moment, and that gives you gravity. The kind of gravity that can't be bought or gifted, only earned. There's a quiet dignity in showing up when it's hard. It changes the way you see yourself. You stop feeling like a victim of your mood or your past or your circumstances. You realize you have agency. You realize you have choice. You realize that while the world is chaotic and full of noise, you can still be consistent in who you are. You can still choose order. You can still choose effort. You can still choose to live a life built on principle instead of feeling. And that choice, made daily, builds a character that cannot be shaken. Consistency is not about being robotic. It's not about never making a mistake. It's about returning to your values, returning to your standards, returning to your path. When you fall, you get back up and walk again. When you stray, you correct course. That's what separates the disciplined from the scattered, not that they never mess up, but that they always come back. They always remember who they are, and in remembering, they reinforce it. Your identity is always in motion. It's not something fixed. It's something sculpted, and you're the sculptor. Every day you wake up, chisel in hand, and decide what stays and what goes. And the tool that gives you the most control, the most leverage, is consistency. Not talent, not ambition, but the ability to do what you said you would do, long after the novelty has worn off. The greatest transformation is not when you achieve the goal. It's when you become someone who could not live any other way. When the behavior becomes non-negotiable, when the standard becomes instinct, when the work becomes your rhythm, that's when you're truly free. Not because you reached a finish line, but because you've anchored your identity in something unshakable. You've become someone who doesn't need to constantly restart, because you've built a life that no longer tolerates inconsistency. And that kind of life is powerful not because it's perfect, but because it's true. Motivation feels good, it's exciting, it rushes through your body like fire in your chest, like lightning in your veins. It wakes you up at 2 a.m. with a new idea. It pumps you up before a workout, before a presentation, before a big decision. But it disappears just as fast. It is a temporary guest. It comes and goes with the weather. It's emotional, it's fleeting, and it's unreliable. The most dangerous lie people believe is that they need to feel motivated to move, that they need to be inspired to act. But life does not wait on your feelings, and neither does your destiny. Discipline is different. Discipline is cold, it's quiet. It doesn't care how you feel, it doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for the right conditions. It shows up when you don't want to. It gets out of bed when the alarm rings and the body aches. It goes to work when the mind screams for comfort. It keeps its word when there's no applause, no reward, no recognition. Discipline is not glamorous, but it's powerful, because it's not driven by mood, it's driven by commitment. And in a world full of people chasing motivation, the few who live by discipline become unstoppable. It's easy to act when you're motivated. Everyone can start. Everyone can take the first step when the vision is fresh and the emotions are high. But the difference between those who succeed and those who quit is not talent. It's not luck. It's not intelligence. It's discipline, the ability to keep going when it gets hard, the ability to push through resistance, the ability to execute when the feeling is gone. That's where winners are made, not in the thrill of beginning, but in the grind of continuing. People who rely on motivation always return to zero. They get excited, they go all in, they burn bright, and then they burn out. And once the emotion fades, they stop. They fall back into old habits. They rationalize their excuses, and then they wait again, hoping motivation will return like some divine gift. But it doesn't, not when you need it most. Discipline, on the other hand, doesn't need to be summoned. It's built. It's forged. It's practiced until it becomes part of you, until it becomes the default, not the exception. You don't get to choose whether you feel like it. You get to choose whether you act like it. And that's the entire game. The world isn't moved by people who feel good. It's moved by people who show up regardless of how they feel. It's moved by the builder who swings the hammer even when he's tired, by the writer who finishes the page when the words won't come, by the athlete who trains when no one's watching. That's what separates the amateur from the professional. The amateur works when he's motivated. The professional works regardless. Discipline doesn't mean you don't have bad days. It doesn't mean you don't get tired, discouraged, overwhelmed. It means you move anyway. You show up, you keep the promise, you do the work, and when you do that long enough, something powerful happens. Your actions start to lead your emotions. Your behavior begins to shape your mood. You feel better because you're acting with integrity. You feel stronger because you're honoring your word. Discipline doesn't follow motivation, it creates it. There's a part of you that wants comfort, that wants ease, that wants relief. But there's another part of you, a deeper part, that wants strength. That wants growth, that wants to become something more. Discipline is the voice of that part. It's the part of you that can see past the immediate moment, past the fatigue, past the boredom. It sees the bigger picture. And it speaks with authority. It says, do it anyway. That voice doesn't shout, it whispers. But if you listen to it, if you obey it, your life will never be the same. Every time you obey discipline over desire, you reinforce the strongest version of yourself. You train your brain to push past resistance. You train your body to follow orders. You train your soul to rise above circumstance. And little by little, you become someone who can be counted on. Someone who can count on themselves. That's the real reward of discipline, not just achievement, but ownership. Knowing that you don't need the right mood, the right weather, the right mindset to follow through. Knowing that when life is chaotic, you're not. You're steady, you're focused, you're consistent. Motivation asks, do I feel like it? Discipline says, it doesn't matter. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is moral. It's not about what you want. It's about what you owe to yourself, to your purpose, to your future. That's why discipline is sacred, because it honors something higher than convenience. It honors your calling. It honors your design. And when you live by it, you rise above the common. You separate yourself from the masses. You stop chasing moments of inspiration, and you start building a life of structure. You'll be tempted every day to wait until you feel better, to put it off, to let yourself off the hook. And every time you resist that temptation, you take back power. You reclaim authority over your mind. That's the battle. That's the war. You against the weaker version of yourself. The part that craves comfort, distraction, avoidance. The part that tells you it's okay to slack today. But discipline says, no, not today. And every time you listen to it, you grow stronger. You build the muscle that most people never develop, the muscle of self-control. This world rewards consistency, not intensity. Anyone can push hard for a day. Few can push steadily for a year, or 5, or 10, and the reason most people fall short isn't because they lack motivation, it's because they never trained discipline. They never learned how to move forward without the wind at their back. But those who do, those who understand that discipline is the real engine, become unshakable. Because they don't rely on the external. They rely on what they've built within, and the beautiful part is this. Discipline gets easier. Not because the task gets easier, but because you become stronger. The same way lifting weights becomes less painful the more you train, following through becomes less of a struggle the more you practice. You harden your resolve, you expand your capacity, you begin to crave the process, and eventually you reach a place where showing up is no longer a question, it's a habit. It's not a debate, it's a decision already made. There is something sacred about doing what you said you would do. It creates peace, not the soft peace of comfort, but the hard-earned peace of clarity. You know who you are, you know what you stand for. You don't need to be motivated because you've built a life where action is not conditional. It's essential. That's the kind of life that inspires, not because it looks easy, but because it reflects mastery, not of talent, not of emotion, but of self. And that's the greatest victory you can win, not over the world, but over yourself. Success doesn't arrive in a moment. It doesn't fall from the sky wrapped in lightning and applause. It doesn't show up when you want it, or when you think you've earned it, or when you beg for it. It comes slowly. Quietly in the shadows of ordinary days. It comes in pieces, tiny wins, small shifts, imperceptible progress layered over time until they form something undeniable. You don't wake up successful. You become successful through a million invisible efforts. through the repetition of excellence when it feels like no one is noticing, through the patience to keep going when no reward is in sight. People crave the shortcut, they want the leap. They want the overnight explosion that takes them from where they are to where they want to be without passing through the fire. But real success doesn't work like that. It compounds, like interest in a bank account. You put in the work today and you don't get much back. You put in the work tomorrow, still nothing. The next day, the same, but you keep depositing, you keep showing up, you keep doing the small things right. And then something strange happens after a while, the curve bends, the growth accelerates, and everyone looks at you and says, "Where did this come from?" But you know exactly where it came from. It came from years of invisible effort. The hardest part is the silence in the beginning, the silence between the action and the result. You eat clean for a week, but your body looks the same. You write every day, but no one's reading. You show up early and stay late, but no one says thank you. And it's in that silence that most people quit. Not because they're weak, but because they don't understand the math. They think success is linear, that each unit of effort produces a unit of result. But it's not. It's exponential. It takes time for the investment to catch up to the return. But when it does, it's unstoppable. Success doesn't reward the intense. It rewards the consistent, not the one who does everything right for 1 month and disappears for 2, but the one who sticks to the system, who keeps stacking wins, who builds brick by brick while others chase moments of brilliance. The race is not to the fastest starter, but to the one who doesn't stop running. And that requires a different mindset, not one driven by results, but one driven by commitment to the process. You need to fall in love with the process, not just tolerate it, not just get through it. You need to crave the routine, the repetition, the grind, because that's where growth lives. That's where mastery is forged. It's not found in some glorious peak experience. It's built in the dark through unglamorous choices, through the discipline of daily improvement, through the courage to do it all again tomorrow, even when today felt like a failure. Compound success is boring to watch, but it's powerful to live. Every rep, every session, every hour of focused work is a seed, and most of those seeds won't sprout for a long time. That's why the impatient never succeed, because they dig up the seed every few days to see if it's growing. They want immediate validation. They want to know their effort is working. But the successful plant and water again and again, until the roots are so deep they can't be shaken by the weather. You can't rush a tree, and you can't rush real success either. The mind must be trained to trust in the invisible, to believe in the unseen. Because in the early days, all your effort will feel like it's disappearing into a void. But it's not disappearing, it's accumulating. Just because you can't measure it yet doesn't mean it's not growing. Progress is not always visible, but it's always real when effort is real. Just like compound interest, the returns don't show up immediately, but when they do, they multiply faster than you can imagine. And here's what most people miss: the compound effect doesn't just apply to your skills or results. It applies to your character. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you strengthen your resolve. Every time you keep your word to yourself, your self-respect grows. Every time you do the hard thing, you build the kind of person who can handle bigger challenges. Success is not just what you gain, it's who you become. And that becoming happens through repeated action, not sudden transformation. There will be days when it feels like nothing is happening, like you're stuck, like you're wasting your time, but those are the most important days, because that's where the compound effect is doing its deepest work, not on the outside, but on the inside. It's rewiring your habits, restructuring your identity, deepening your resilience. You can't measure that with a scale or a stopwatch, but you'll feel it over time. You'll look back after a year and realize how far you've come, how much more capacity you have, how much more grounded and capable you are. The illusion of sudden success is everywhere. Social media is full of highlight reels, of the big wins, the big announcements, the big moments. But what you don't see is the decade behind the moment. The thousands of quiet hours, the doubts, the restarts, the mundane repetitions. Real success stories aren't sudden, they're slow. They're compound stories, built over time by people who refused to quit, who stayed faithful to the work even when the world offered no confirmation that it was worth it. You are not late, you are not behind, you are not moving too slow, you are building, and builders know that the foundation takes the longest, because it has to support everything that comes next, and no one sees the foundation. They only see the finished structure, but the strength of that structure is entirely dependent on what was done underground. So if your results aren't flashy yet, good. That means you're still digging, still laying stone, still doing it right. Keep stacking, keep going, keep trusting the process. Your job is not to judge the speed. Your job is to keep moving forward, to let the compound effect do its work. Because one day that quiet effort will speak so loud it will silence every doubt. One day you'll look back and realize that what felt like a grind was actually grace. That the days you wanted to quit were the days that counted the most, and you'll know that success didn't arrive suddenly. It arrived inevitably because you earned it piece by piece, moment by moment, choice by choice, until there was no other outcome possible. Life is unpredictable. It throws chaos at your plans, shatters your expectations, and demands your attention when you least have the strength to give it. Circumstances are never still, they move like weather, sometimes in your favor, often against it. You will have seasons of joy and seasons of pain, times when everything seems aligned, and times when the world feels like it's falling apart. But through all of it, one thing can remain constant: you. Not in your emotions, not in your environment, but in your discipline, your values, your actions. Consistency is the great equalizer. It's the choice to act according to principle rather than condition, to remain anchored while everything else moves. Most people live at the mercy of their circumstances. If the day is good, they're focused. If it's hard, they break. If people are supportive, they feel worthy. If people criticize, they shut down. Their internal state is tied to what's happening around them. They don't act, they react. They ride the highs and they collapse in the lows. But the people who truly build something meaningful, something that lasts, they've learned how to break that pattern. They've learned that if you want to live a powerful life, you can't be governed by external shifts. You must become immovable in your commitment, even when the world around you is unstable. That doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It doesn't mean you don't struggle. It means you don't stop. It means you keep doing the work you promised yourself you would do, even when your energy is drained and the path ahead is blurred. The strongest people you know are not the ones who haven't suffered, they're the ones who remain consistent in the middle of suffering. They kept showing up. They kept building. They kept standing for what mattered, even when no one stood with them. Because real growth doesn't happen when things are easy. It happens when you choose discipline in the middle of difficulty, when everything in you says slow down, pull back, wait until it gets better, and you respond with action. That's when you learn what you're really made of. That's when your integrity deepens. That's when your resilience becomes rooted. Circumstances reveal your level of commitment. It's easy to be consistent when the path is clear. But it's your ability to remain consistent when the path is dark that makes you unbreakable. You will be tested. You will be disappointed. You will face failure, loss, betrayal, fear. And none of those are reasons to stop. None of those are valid enough to make you abandon the identity you are building. If your consistency is only alive in comfort, it's not real consistency, it's conditional. But real consistency is forged in the fire not by avoiding struggle, but by enduring it without breaking your word to yourself. When the storm comes, and it will, your habits become your shelter. Your discipline becomes your defense. Your structure becomes your survival, and the beauty is, you don't need ideal circumstances to grow. You don't need perfect timing or full energy or complete clarity. You just need to keep doing the right thing every day, especially on the hard days, because hard days are not the enemy, they're the proving ground. They're the moments where you decide if your goals are convenient or sacred, if you're chasing a dream or honoring a duty, if you're a tourist in your own life or the architect of it. You won't always feel inspired. You won't always have momentum, but you can always choose consistency. You can choose to write even when the words come slow. You can train when the body feels heavy. You can love when it hurts. You can lead when you're scared. You can keep your promises when it would be easier to make excuses. And in doing so, you become something stronger than motivation. You become steady. You become stable. You become grounded in who you are, not what's happening. This world respects consistency because it's rare. It's not loud, it's not showy, but it's powerful because it means you can be trusted, not just by others but by yourself. When you're consistent, you know who you are. You know what you stand for. And that clarity becomes a compass, even when the map is gone. You might be tired. You might be surrounded by confusion. But if your actions are rooted in principle, you will always find your way. Your circumstances don't define you. Your reactions to them do, and the more consistent you are in how you handle pressure, adversity, and temptation, the more power you develop over your own life. You stop being a victim of chance and you start becoming a force. A presence, a person who creates stability in unstable times. That's leadership. That's maturity. That's real strength, not the absence of difficulty, but the refusal to be ruled by it. And the people who change the world, or even just their own lives, they're not the ones who had perfect conditions. They're the ones who stopped waiting for the conditions to change. They stopped needing everything to line up before they moved. They just moved every day forward. They built their life like a lighthouse, tall, immovable, lit from within while the sea crashed around them. And eventually the storms passed, the water calmed. But the lighthouse remained because it wasn't built on feeling. It was built on consistency. So if life feels chaotic, if everything feels upside down, return to your anchor. Return to your structure, to your habits, to your code, to your rituals. These are not just tasks. They are lifelines. They hold you steady when everything else pulls at you. They remind you that you are still in control, that you are still capable, that you can still act. The external can shift 1,000 times, but if the internal remains firm, you are unshakable. This is what separates those who drift from those who drive. The drifters are always waiting for the right energy, the right mindset, the right season. But the ones who drive, they create rhythm where there is noise. They impose order where there is chaos. They build momentum where there is resistance. Because they've learned that consistency is not something you do when you feel strong, it's something you do to become strong. To rise above, to lead, to build, to overcome. No one is born consistent. It's earned through repetition, through commitment, through the daily refusal to let your feelings dictate your future. And once you have it, once you've built that internal stability, no one can take it from you. Not failure, not fatigue, not fear, because it's not tied to what's happening outside. It's tied to something deeper, the part of you that chooses who you are every single day, no matter what comes.